ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very special episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan, with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over there at Sir Lucian Gaming, and super special guest, Mr. Harlan from the Better Than Heroes podcast show on Twitch. Do you have a podcast? I forget.
We don't. Yeah, okay. We call it. We just go show.
Yeah, it's a show.
Just
yeah,
to cover
just a show.
It all.
That's cool. Yeah. So Harlan is a cool person and invited me over to play Spelljammer on your Better Than Heroes show on Twitch, which was really fun. And then you were just a cool person, have a lot in common. And I was like, you should come over and be on the Saturday Morning D&D Show. So Mr. Harlan, aside from, well, tell us a little bit about your show, your Spelljammer show, and all the stuff that you do.
Thank you, Jordan. I don't know if I've ever been complimented so much this early in the morning on a Saturday.
Yeah.
So
that's typical Saturday morning D&D show etiquette. Yeah.
Good. I feel like I'm watching like cartoons as a kid right now. I'm ready to go. I've got the sugar buzz. Let's do it.
That's the vibe. That's the vibe.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on. I've been a fan of yours for a long time. The videos that you make, I love your lore videos, and I'm just super happy to be here. But yeah, we're Better Than Heroes. We stream every Monday. We run a 5e Spelljammer game, which I know, right? It's not out there.
Everybody take a drink, Spelljammer. Spelljammer.
So, yeah, we've been having a really good time. We started around the start of quarantine. I was already playing in a home game with two of the people on the stream, and when they're professional comedians, and when all the comedy clubs shut down, they're like, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, yes, I do. So
cool.
So I'm happy to be here and talk about it.
That's awesome. So when did you start D&D?
I started playing the week I moved to Denver, Colorado, which is where I live now.
Okay.
The week I moved into this apartment. My friend ran a game, just, classic nerd buddy, was like, hey, do you want to do this? And I was like, I've never done it. He shepherded me through it, and then it very quickly turned into, I want to play all the time. Yeah. I want to play, and then which quickly turns into you being a DM, and now I'm a perma DM. So,
yeah. No, that's similar stories. I think for both me and Lucia, like you get the bite, and then you're just like, well, if I want to play more than the once every 2 weeks that my friends think it's kind of cool, then I better I better run games, and then you get like swarmed with people who are like, oh, I'll play. Mm-hmm. And I think before the baby was born, I think I was doing like 4 games a week, and that was a lot, and I had to like step back a lot from that, but it was fun.
That's part of the bug bite too, is at some point you will try to do 4 or 5 games in a single week, because you're thinking, I can do it. I'm not doing anything on that Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
It's too much. I hit that point this year because I already knew the first game I ran was with a bunch of my Indiana buddies, just to kind of like stay in touch when I moved out here. And that's a game that has been running for almost 3 years. I had this tattoo from killing one of the players in that game. Wow. But we've always been online. So when the pandemic hit, I had more of a social life than I had before because I was running like 4 nights a week too, and like doing Better Than Heroes stuff. And so I went back and just like got close to counting exactly, and I ran over 100 games of D&D last year, and I definitely, for the first time ever, hit my limit of like, I'm feeling a little burned out. I would like to play now.
That's fun. Did you play Spelljammer back in the day, or was it just something that you were interested in, or I guess why Spelljammer? Like it's fun and unique, but I was wondering if there's like, I don't know, talk to me about Spelljammer.
I think that when we started doing this, we started doing Better Than Heroes. We had a couple of different like avenues that we were gonna go down. And I was like, hey guys, what if I just pitched you a couple of campaigns for our kind of like sessions hero? Like, what if I just said, which one of these do you want to do? And one pitch was like a homebrew world. One pitch was, I think like just running directly in the Forgotten Realms. And then the other one was Spelljammer, and they were all excited about it. A couple of them, 2 of the players have been playing D&D for a long time, and so they had never heard of it or really encountered it, and so they got excited about the weirdness and the uniqueness of it. But for me, the thing that I love about D&D specifically is the magic system.
Okay,
is the like infinite kind of like big world magic, the scaling up of it, and I mean, another reason I love D&D, like in comparison to like a lot of other games, is it just feels like a bottomless wormhole. Like my brain, my obsessive brain can just latch on. And Spelljammer felt like an infinite version of that. And I got really into the idea that like, okay, if we don't want to play in this like pseudo night world, this like medieval world, and if there are it was like around a time when the D&D community was really struggling with a lot of the negative things in D&D, like, you know, a lot of the like racism built into it. And I was like, this feels like such a cool way to just show that we don't have to be doing these things, that we can expand out into like, okay, absolutely anything is possible. There's an infinite worlds. There's planets where like things are incredibly different. Let's go play in those worlds and not just play in the like goblins are bad world.
Yeah. On the Sword Coast, and like every other thing that Wizards has made. No, it's kind of fun, and I feel like it's the natural progression for a lot of dungeon masters too, because like you get really excited and you're like, oh, we're in a castle, and I guess it's also kind of the natural progression for players, where, you know, you're level 1 and you're like fighting goblins, and then by the time you're level 20, you're plane hopping to the city of Brass to like get a letter to then take it over to the crystal sphere of worms and do, you know, and it's just, that's cool. So yeah. No, and that's really fun. Spelljammer's super awesome. I had another question I was going to ask you, and I totally spaced it now. Have you ever thought of doing some like Planescape-y stuff too, or just was Spelljammer kind of like that's the direction you want to go, or do you incorporate a lot of different lore into your Better Than Heroes game?
I think I'm a huge fan of like the City of Doors. I'm not going to sigil. I don't.
Sigil,
never know. Yeah. I always see someone say this is the definite way to say it.
sigil.
Yeah,
sigil's good, but sigil is correct.
Yeah. So I love that city. I'm a huge Chris Perkins fan. I used to watch Dice Camera Action a bunch, and that was really what like got the hook of like, oh, you can take your normal worlds and make it this huge world. So yes, I have a lot of plans to kind of like hook the players into other worlds and bring in the different planes of existence, because it does hit that same spot for me. That's like, okay, let's play in a world that I think that I can't remember where this is mentioned, but like on Mechanist, where if you roll dice, it's always the same number. Like all the dice.
You always take the average or whatever of the dice roll. Yeah. So your damage will, if you have a D8, your damage will always be 5 or something like that. And I thought that was cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, just like little things like that, where if this is true, what else is true? Parts of the game that feel alien, but also have this like system to it, this other world.
Yeah, that's really cool. I've been taking, I've done this once so far, but I took the Rod of Seven Parts, which is a 2nd edition game, and then ran it as a 5th edition game, and we ended in Sigil. And so now I was looking at like Planescape adventures, and another classic Planescape adventure is the Great Modron March, and that's another one that I'm like, I think I want to like upscale this and play it in 5th edition. It'd be a lot of fun.
Dude, that run of adventures is so good. Dead Gods in 2E is one of the coolest adventures I've ever read. It reads like a novel, and it also inspired, like there's clearly game mechanics in there where you're like, whoa, this is smart DMing. They like talk to you as a DM to be like, you should throw in this cutscene here and just describe this to the players, and like they're not there and their characters don't know, but the players get this scene. And I'm like, that's so
and it's cinematic. It's like a movie. It's kind of fun. What other RPGs do you like to play? I mean, or is it just kind of D&D at this point? You said you ran 100 games, so I imagine you play a lot of D&D.
I do. Yeah, I think because we do an interview show also on our channel on Thursdays called The Dungeon, which you were a guest on. Lucian, you should come hang out on it too.
Sure.
It's Andrew is the co-host with me, and he has really inspired me to get going on some other games, because I think I had a hard time making the jump. I always wanted to, I said it, but just like having someone to run the game, or like knowing which one to go to first, I just kind of felt overwhelmed and knew D&D so well. But he pushed me over the edge, and I have played a lot of Tin Candles, which is this weird little game that it's not little, it's very big in the TTRPG world, but it's super unique because you tell the players at the beginning that their characters are going to die in the end of the session. And it's no prep, very heavily improvised, but with like a great rule system that like fits with the style of game. I highly recommend that. And I've been playing some Lasers and Feelings. We played the Swords and Emotions pack. Andrew ran some of that for us. I think we're gonna stream some of that. But I'm really excited to talk to you guys about Monster of the Week, because you can't see it, but right here is on my bookshelf behind me I got that for Christmas. My wonderful wife Sarah got it for me, and I really love that system because I'm like an X-Files Buffy fan. And you all have been playing it, right?
We did one session, just started, yeah.
Okay.
So a friend of the show, LB Hackemup, who people have said should be the like third host of our show. They're like, you should just keep her on all the time. But she's a very busy person. She wanted to run. She loves Monster of the Week, and so she's doing like it's a test run, I think, in her mind, but it's very professionally done. Like, she knows what she's doing, and she's streaming it on her show, on her Twitch channel, and invited us to be on. So we're doing like a 4-week run, 4-episode, just so she gets the idea.
We're a mini-series.
Yeah, a little mini-series. And she's like, if you like the characters, we could always bring them back and stuff. And we're having a lot of fun with it. And I've never played Monster of the Week, but I've played a lot of other games like that. Like I talk about Kids on Bikes a lot, and I like that game. And we always Lucian really likes Tales from the Loop, even though we haven't played it yet. But
oh, nice. Yeah, Andrew's a big Tales of the Loop fan. Those are like both that one that you mentioned, Kids on Bikes. When you talked about it on our show, Jordan, I had that same response when I learned about Monster of the Week or Tales of the Loop. I'm like, oh god, I want to play it so bad. Like, it's on the list now. Someday I'll have a Saturday.
It's
I
funny
like how your list is like you play D&D, which is the mainstream, and then the ones you dabbled in are very indie games. You didn't dabble in, you like didn't jump over to Pathfinder, you didn't jump over to the Monty Cook stuff, which are a little bit more mainstream. You jumped right over to the indie stuff, which was really cool. So you're like on the two edges of tabletop role-playing games as far as what you're playing. That's pretty funny.
I mean, I love the weird shit, you know. So I feel like I get what I need out of D&D, especially as this like classic big experience, and then I want to just like dive into some weird stuff, which is why we're playing Spelljammer too.
Yeah, I have not played 10 Candles yet, but I have it. But for the last 3 years, I've been doing a Halloween Kids on Bikes game. Which has been really fun. And so it's always different. We have new characters, and it's like, what's going to happen this Halloween? And it always takes place on Halloween. But after reading 10 Candles, I was like, oh, I think I want to do that now. Or 10 Lights, that's what it's called. I'm sorry. Is it?
No, it's 10 Candles.
It's 10 Candles?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to, that one, see, because reading through that rules, I was like, oh, this is exactly what you kind of want for a Halloween.
Yeah.
Like,
which the mechanic in that is each candle is getting snuffed out at some point, which is showing you the length of the game, right? So that's the mechanic to it is.
And the impending doom is coming in on you.
Yeah.
And if you play in the dark with just the candles, it gets darker.
So I should put the episode up because we've streamed 3 sessions of it, and we had major technical difficulties with one, and but the other 2 are really good, and well, the second one's good, it just is glitchy, but because we figured out a way to be able to stream that, because it's hard because it's a show that's built to be sitting around the table. The designer of that is super good at making mechanics that like really evoke an experience, but not to invite myself over to your house, Jordan, but I will play or run that game for you anytime that you want wonderful. To. Hit me up. I figured out how to do it online, and I love it, and it's super fun.
No, I said this before, but once we get vaccines rolled out, I want to
convention running again.
Conventions, but I also want to instigate FriendCon, where I just get all of my internet friends, and I want to put them in like one place, and we just play a bunch of RPGs for 4 days. And the more I talk about
is so good.
No, the more I talk about this, they're just like, like it doesn't need no convention. Just like we rent a house, everyone has their own room. Like lots of food and drinking and games, and we'll bring internet and streaming equipment. It'll be so fun. It was like, let's do it.
Oh man, to go on a weird tangent. My wife and I were gonna have our wedding last October, and we didn't because of the pandemic. We might again this year, not sure yet. But one of my dreams with that was I run 3 games in my homebrew world that are all in the same like timeline, but interacting differently. And my dream of the wedding was like, all of these people are going to be in one place, and this is the only time that all of them have any reason to be in the one place, because they're all from all of these different worlds. And I was like, please, Sarah, please. And she plays in the game like she would. I don't know why I'm begging her to do
my
it,
wedding.
No, it's not her. It's not it. It's more just like we will be so busy. We should not play an 8-hour game of D&D, which is what it would take when you ran a session for 12 people.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Jordan Danimal says you should rent that house in Australia so we can all go there.
Oh yeah.
I
mean, that's cheaper than
D&D in
Las Vegas, but hey.
God, Las Vegas. You go to Las Vegas and don't go to any casino.
Oh yeah,
just
that's the plan.
Yeah. Just a really nice hotel.
Just get a nice hotel.
Yeah.
It'll be great. No, that's awesome. Very excited, and we should run some more games together. It'd be fun. I mean, Lucia and I are always we like one shots, and we like trying out new systems. And there's been a couple times where we're like, okay, this is the year. We're gonna do a system a month, and we're gonna play all the games that are on our shelves, and it just never happens. But I don't know, maybe like a tentative every 3 months we do a one shot of some new system so that we can actually play like 10 Candles and Tales from the Loop and things like that. So kind of fun.
Yeah. We've been doing the same thing. It's just hard.
Yeah.
Because, it's hard to get it going. But because
Yep.
we have the same thing where we're like so excited about all of these games, and we have like in our own time play them, and we're like had the best experiences, and we're like, we should do this. This would be so fun to do. But it's hard.
Well, I'm a Kickstarter junkie, so these games keep showing up on my doorstep. I'm like, oh, this one's really good. Oh, this one's really good. And oh my God, this one's really good. You should read this one. It's like I can never stop filling the shelves here.
Yep.
RPG books. So back to Spelljammer. I had a question about Spelljammer that would, I think, help out our audience a little bit. We talk about it quite a bit. You're a dungeon master. What have you had to change because you're running a 5e game, or are you running a 5e game of it?
I am running a 5e game of it.
Okay, so you've had to think about what things did I need to change if I'm using resources from any of the other books. What's the big thing you feel like you're spending time on either converting or coming up with a rule that matches 5e so that it works?
Man, I could talk about this forever because I luckily have a couple of friends in my life who DM friends who just let me spam them about this because I have so many thoughts on this. But I loved Jordan's videos about it. Because they feel like when I started Better Than Heroes, I just read all of the 2e stuff back to front because I'm just an anxious nerd who was like, I have to know. And there's, I think, so little mechanics that I took with me. But I also don't feel like a common thing amongst people who run Spelljammer and 5e or try to is they say, you can take the Salt Marsh ships stat blocks and the combat rules of Descent into Avernus of the Hellfire engines, and you kit bash them together, and then you have Spelljammer ships. And there's also a stat block in the back of Dungeon of the Mage where that is a Spelljammer helm. It has the rules for a Spelljammer helm, but there's something missing in there. And I was on a Twitter thread about it one time with a couple of other people, and I was being a little snarky, and I'm like, this is just fan service. This is just like Wizards trying to get people off their back because it's not applicable to actually running a Spelljammer campaign. And I ended up getting an argument on Twitter with someone who I didn't realize was a writer for D&D until after I'd already gotten an argument with him. He was very nice.
Twitter argument? Crazy.
Yeah, I know.
On Twitter? Nice. That happens?
He was very nice. But I think I could fall down any rabbit hole of like, there's this rule or that rule, or this is the thing. But I think the one thing that has worked for me, this like puzzle piece that I figured out is you can't have these ship stat blocks, and you can't have ships fighting each other, but you're dealing a lot of the time with ships being a wide distance away from each other, and the players have to make the decision of are we chasing this ship? Are we trying to get close to this ship? Are we trying to get away from this ship? If we don't know, like, what approach do we take when we do know? And that moment is really the key of being able to run a Spelljammer campaign, because when you run into things, monsters, let's say you just run into a monster, there's just like a Gravis Slayer there. Excellent monster. I love it to death. And like the players know they want to try and get away immediately, but this thing is trying to glom onto you. So we recently ran on our stream an encounter, just like this little tiny mini game. It's basically like a built out skill challenge where there's just like a pursuit level, and if you get to X amount, you can get away. If the other ship gets to X amount, then they catch you, and then you do like ship to ship. They're right next to each other. You fight each other, combat. And that's the main thing where I'm like, this is the only puzzle piece I couldn't figure out, because there's a bunch of stuff like that is in 2E that dives deep into like, how long does it take you to leave a planet? How, how fast can you go? And this time, what's the speed of the ship? And those things are important, but those things are also usually litigating this moment of like, do you get away or do you not?
Yeah. That's what I was wondering too, because I thought when I thought about running one, what you just mentioned, I always thought you would have to come up with some rules of distance change, because that's the whole thing. It's all about where somebody is and where they're going to go, and how somebody's either going to counter that or go with it. And what's that going to, because once you get to combat, that's just moving stuff. Once they're close enough, that's normal combat. Doing stuff on the ship is normal combat. Adventuring, talking with NPCs, that's all normal. The only thing you're really adding in is the chase, the sea chase, the classic, are they long chases? Are they chases over 25 minutes, over 5 hours before they start to close? You see a little bit of it in the Matt Colville when he does his campaign, The Chain, and they're having to deal with a ship that's chasing them, but it's only gaining like a foot a minute or something. So it's going to be hours before they actually get there. So what do you do with your adventure while that kind of stuff's happening? Because it's a much slower timeline. So it's cool that you actually had mentioned that. And I was wondering if there was anything else missing, like breathing in space. Is there any mechanics to that, or is that just a knowable thing? I mean, but you said skill check stuff, so I could see how you could take skill checks to start doing some of that stuff. Yeah.
And there are like you as a DM, you can kind of dive into any of these things that you want to, and let your players, as long as your players know that this is the rule system that you're using, you can do whatever you want. And you can also not care about anything you want to, like, because it's about, creating this experience where the players are having fun. And that's why your video walks it through perfectly. Like I'm so jealous that like, because I just spent like hours trying to understand it, and you streamlined it so well, of like the hex movement of like your helm rating and how you move around. And like that's so beautiful.
I don't want to under like that took a while to like that whole series was like months in the building, where I'm just like, how do I do this? And I had to basically, I think I taught myself 2E. And I was like at my desk, like rolling dice, and I'm like, and then I would move here, and like just having a fake fight, because I'm like, how do I explain this? But yeah, so
I love those videos so much because it just feels like the conversation I was having myself. It's like I pre-internet days where I like found someone at a school, like a party or something, who liked the same obscure band as me, and knew the lead singer's name or something, because I was like, I did all this stuff in my brain. But yeah, like it communicates it perfectly. And I just don't love the hex grid system. It looks really cool. I do love the aesthetic of like moving around, but it's a different game, and I don't think it engages players in a way that is designed for 5e. And because everybody wants their turn, when their moment to do the thing. And I think that that's just like the main struggle of Spelljammer for me, because everything else is just like fun. Like you can just make up planets, you can make up asteroid encounters, like all of that stuff is, but like that, the litigation of the moment when you need to get away or not is really good. Like
I think, and actually when Spelljammer came out, it had its niche following, but if I remember correctly, one of the big complaints about it is that it was an entirely different game. Like we would have our role play, like running around a dungeon game that was popular with, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. And then you would have this like ship game, which was on a completely different map. And it had completely different rules. I mean, you're still kind of rolling to see if you hit, but like you're talking about, and I always think of the Star Wars wargaming people that I see at the tabletop store, my gaming store, and they've got the lasers that show, okay, yeah, you're within threat range of this, and they're kind of moving their ships around, and that's fun. But when you're sitting down to be like, yeah, I really want to play D&D, and then they present you this like obscure like
tabletop,
it's like, well, if you
miniature
upgrade
wargame.
your ship, but again, that's fun for some people, is to have this clunker of a ship. You get money, you buy better equipment to make it go faster and things like that. So
Yeah, and I've really considered, and I might still incorporate this somehow. There's this like whole thing with our ship and our campaign that we don't even dive into. But like, I really like maybe using the Matt Colville rules of like strongholds and followers for a ship, and just like you upgrade that, and it is its home base. We talked to 2 other Spelljammer games on our talk show, and they both do it like that, where they have it's just kind of this floating home base for them, and they don't do ship encounters specifically because it doesn't it doesn't quite fit with the 5e rules, but they do a really good job of still making this ship a thing that is involved with the player's campaign, but isn't involved in the action of the actual game.
Yeah, so, like if you're gonna do a Spelljammer game, you need a that character that is the ship. You need the Millennium Falcon, or you need the Enterprise, because like those inanimate objects are have personality and are just as important to you as like your actual character. And I think that's another reason I've always been interested in running a Spelljammer ship or Spelljammer game. We have a question from Shozama, and I don't know if you'll know the answer to this, but I thought I'd ask because he was very polite and said please. He would like to know if you prefer the rules presented by the Complete Spacefarer's Handbook, which was written by a freelancer, or the War Captain's Companion, which was written by TSR. And I don't know the difference, but maybe you do.
I do. I like to pick and choose is the answer. Like I like to pull things from each one as they surf me. Yeah. Which is kind of a cop out, but I like looking at them both because they both have very unique answers and do the same thing. Like their attention is on different things. And I think like the war, like the war, I always say the word order wrong, but the companion, the second one, is much more focused on like this military, like ship or ship thing, where the first one is much more focused on like moving around planets and like navigating the world, which is cool. Like it's super cool that they're doing it from those two perspectives.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, we are a D&D talk show that talks about D&D and not just Spelljammer. And I was surprised we got this Unearthed Arcana. Were you expecting that, Mr. Lucian?
No, I wasn't expecting Unearthed Arcana yet, but we started to need to get something because here we are in January. We haven't seen any test material come out quite yet. But it does kind of match your glee for possible, Ravenloft kind of setting. Possibly, or like a dark phase type setting that you've been thinking that's coming down the pipe, because we've heard little things here and there about stuff like that, and this kind of definitely says, okay, they must have something coming at this point that's very gothic and very what matches their gothic settings, Ravenloft. So I thought it was interesting, and it's another push in the way of removing stats and abilities from maybe the race you are and move it more towards what like they're calling the lineage, and things that can happen to you might give you those things, or kind of breaking stereotypes down that they've always relied on. So it's definitely their move in the last year or two to kind of break those stereotypes. I thought it was pretty interesting. I love that it's how do you guys pronounce, is it Dampier? Is just the H is silent instead of just saying vampire, is it?
Well, I mean, I know that on this stream the PH is silent, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So
always.
The DH
but
Ampere? It's an Ampere?
I think it's Dampier. That's how I've always said it, but I honestly don't know. But it's something you see if you go to. So we're talking about Gothic Lineages. This is the new Unearthed Arcana that came out, and they're not races, but they're lineages, which is you could be a dwarf that got turned into a Dampier, or you could be a elf that has become a reborn. But the three of them are the Hexblood, the Reborn, and the Dhampir. And I thought it was Dhampir, but I honestly don't know. That's like a half vampire. Like you can go in the sunlight or something. A blade, if you will. I don't actually know. A Vampire Hunter D.
Vampire Hunter D is what I always imagined it as. Yeah, exactly.
And this is interesting. Like, again, they want to... Wizards of the Coast feels like they want to take that... They regret using the word race, even though it's been with D&D for so long. And
the current writers regret the old writers.
Thank you.
Have strapped them with, yes.
Because even Pathfinder calls it something, your ancestry or something like that. But they want to get rid of that. And so I thought it was interesting, but they don't want to rewrite their older stuff. So they're specifically have a little blip in here where they're like, going forward, the word race is actually going to mean this. And so they're redefining it for older and future publications. But the coolest thing about this, I thought, because it is just another like D&D race type, but you're actually combining two different things. So you could be humanoid and undead, or you could be and we haven't seen that because the satyr, I think, is just Fey, and the centaur is just Fey. They're not humanoid Fey. They're not two different kinds. And then that opens up a can of worms where, because you're humanoid, this works on you, but because you're undead, turn undead also works on you. And so there's just weird, I don't know, it's kind of like, do you think it's a negative or is it a positive to have both of those? Or is it both, I guess?
Right. Well, it's the first time we see mechanics where you can change, right? Not just you asked your DM if I could be something different, but your character evolves to something different or is part of something different. Or now you're kind of mixing and matching half this, half that kind of thing. Whereas before you were always just kind of choosing. So I think it's kind of interesting that we get those types of mechanics. Which ones go away? Like all of a sudden, if you're human and you go undead and you get the certain things, but what if you're, I don't know, what can an Aasimar then go reborn or Hexblood or, can
well, and you don't get both worlds, I would assume, right? Like, if you're Aasimar, you lose the light cantrip because now you're a reborn that has whatever they have. I don't know, deathless.
Right, because they talk about you use the rules in Tasha, where Tasha talks about doing those kinds of changes and the lineage changes. And I've only read over them like briefly because I have not used too much of the Tasha's lineage stuff yet. But I think it's just another step in that way. But I've always wanted in the book. I can't believe there wasn't always rules in every edition that says what happens when you get bit by a vampire, what happens when you get cut by a werewolf, when do you get lycanthropy, when do I get to be a were-rat? We fought were-rats and one of our people was going to turn into a were-rat. What is that going to mean? Or that kind of stuff. Because there's always things trying to turn your character into something else, mind flare, putting stuff in you so that you become, all that kind of cool stuff. But the rule, it's implied in there, but there's not necessarily rules right in the DMG telling you how to handle it or what to do with it if it does happen. So I think this is a step that way.
I love this so much. I mean, I think it's clear from like the stuff I was talking about earlier of like, if we live inside of these magic worlds, if we're playing inside of these magic worlds, then like, so much is possible here. We don't have to live inside of this world that is like in real life problematic because it's talking about like eugenic race stuff. That's a real big bummer and feels bad. And so, but I think another side of this is all stuff that DMs have been doing at their table forever. You can't pick up the DMG or without having some knowledge about tabletop role-playing games. It really doesn't teach you how to play Dungeons and Dragons. It gives you this like wider spread of like what is possible and like the Forgotten Realms and the planes and blah 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 blah. But I love this kind of stuff because it feels like it's teaching the skills that people have, like DMs have learned already, and it's
to a new generation in a way, like oh, and I think I've talked about this before. Like some people need the okay from the people that wrote the book. So it's like, people, now it's okay. But like, I think the like old school role-playing people are just like, well, no, like, I don't know. You want to be a cat? You're a cat. I don't care. Like,
yeah. So. And I have a couple of friends, shout out to my friend Ben, who is just so on top of what is Adventures League approved and what is not, because he really likes that stuff. But he's, he likes it because he wants to all be on the same page, and he's never against stuff like this. But I think that's an important perspective that like we forget because we're just people playing at home. How valuable it is to DMs who want this kind of freedom, but are playing at tables that's not just their friends, or are playing at conferences or running games for game stores or stuff. To see this like progressive take on like be approached by wizards is so great, because it's like you get to do weird like hag.
Yeah, you're like
stuff.
a hagborn
so
thing, and yeah.
Well, and there's a personality type that exists in our community, and it's all gaming communities. They're rule followers.
Yeah,
they find a game, they open the packet, they
followers.
Look at the rules, whether
leader.
it's a board game or whatever, and they follow it. They don't want to think about variants. They don't want to think about, just make it up as you go. Right. They're very about, no, your game says this is the rules, that's what I'm going to do. Now, certainly there are people that take that way too far and whatever, but you're
like
playing with
contract.
those people. You're playing with people that are like, oh, the book says I could do this. Can I do that? And that's just in their brain. It makes sense. Oh, it's a rule. I'm following it. So I think we're starting to see, and because even in the chat they were talking about, well, you've always been able to do anything you've wanted as a dungeon master, but if you're that type of personality that just likes, I follow the rules, it was in the game, that's how Monopoly's played, I read the thing, I'm not making up rules for Monopoly on how we're going to do it. Now lots of people do, lots of people have house rules to make it more fun, but other people are like, no, this is how we play Monopoly because this is what page 2 says. And that's their fun. They enjoy
that
it.
Person
so we kind of
like,
mix all that together.
I would like to play by the rules. Does anyone else want to play the game that we're playing?
But we had a DM on the dungeon, John Roy, who came in, and he's like, oh, why would I homebrew any rules? Why would I do anything that's not by the book? Because I don't want to be in charge of this. I don't want my friends to be mad at me for ruling one way or another. Like, let's just look it up, because then we're all on the same page. It feels like a social contract, and those contracts just include things that are more expansive. And
we all decide the rules. I always like that. I've leaned to that more in my dungeon master career or game master career, where trying to be the one that figures out how things work versus let's just ask the players what makes sense. What can we all agree on? And that's how we'll play it moving this way forward. And that way it's more collaborative and everybody buys into it versus you're the arbitrary judge and you side one way and one person's happy and the other people are mad or whatever. You take yourself out of that. You're just like, hey, the rules aren't mine. This game is ours. We're going to figure this out.
The myth of D&D is that the DM is in charge.
Yeah.
They just never are.
So
it's true. So do you think this is going to be a Ravenloft campaign setting? Because Ravenloft is probably one of the more popular,
it's their Gothic
medieval
setting,
one,
right?
Do
they have any other Gothic settings?
Or is it going to be Innistrad, which is Magic the Gathering?
I think it's going to be the Shadowfell. I think they've already laid out some stuff for like Shadowfell world and like this dark grimness, and they've put out a Strahd adventure and it did really well for them. And so I think that they're going to kind of like have this crossover that like leaks into Ravenloft, maybe has some connection into or around that, but is a Shadowfell campaign.
That's interesting because that would be the first, that would be the second. We've gone to the Hells thus far in 5e is plane hopping, but that's it. So we've not gone to any other planes yet officially in 5e, so that'd be the second one if they did. I would love a Shadowfell book. Like,
there's so much
heartbeat.
There's so much.
And there's so much in Mordenkainen's too.
But
that like
do it.
It's stuff that's in the back of different adventures. Stat blocks that we've just seen before. But a missing piece of that is there are so many Shadowfell stat blocks in there.
Or what if we get the book you've been wanting, which is a planes book, and this is how it's going to work. They're going to give us 3 things that come from one plane and 3 things come from another plane, and the book is like a mixture of 7 or 8 or 9 of those. So just like Tasha's was 22 subclasses, we could have like this list of 3 for Shadowfell, 3 for the Feywild, 3 for whatever other plane they want to do, and say here's this, and this, and here's your big planes book.
That'd be fun. And then I'll staple it together, and I'll just be, it'll be great. I still really want the idea, or we talked about it a couple weeks ago, I think, where I want a Feywild Shadowfell book, but like you're holding it and it says Feywild, and then you flip it upside down and it's reverse printed so that the Shadowfell is on the other side. And I'm like, Wizards, hire me. I've got the ideas you need. That would sell so quickly. So,
my project managing brain is like that. Like, how do you print that? Like,
yeah. And their marketing guys go, he wants us to put 2 books into one, and we're only going to sell 1 book for 1 price. That doesn't make any sense. We want to sell 2 books for 2 prices.
Right.
Marketing genius. What?
But yeah,
I do like the
4th edition Gloomrot and Beyond Shadowfell book is an amazing sandbox to just play around in. Like, and I've used it and I've said it before, and I think I did a video about it recently, and it's really awesome. So
well, you pushed your players to their, because you enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, I was reading that and I'm like, you guys are going to the Shadowfell.
Players there.
I'm a terrible DM because I'm totally just like, Jordan's interested in Al-Qadim deserts right now, so that's where you are. And
Jump
a
on the
portal
train.
brought you here, and you're like, what? Like,
we're railroading there. Jump on this train.
but they have fun. It's okay. It's all about having fun. If my players were just like, we hate this, then I would be like, all right. But they have a good time.
That's awesome.
This is something that I'm glad we both saw this, Lucian. But there's a D&D campaign that's going to be going with puppets, and it's called Stuff of Legends on YouTube. And it's a 30-minute drunk history style D&D reenactment. So the players have their story, and then it's what their actions are reenacted in the fantasy world with puppets. Brilliant, and I wish I thought of this before anybody else, kind of a thing. But it looks like it's going to be really funny, and that's on February 2nd, so I think we'll talk about that.
It was on their news channel, and they just announced it, and I thought, Jordan will like this.
He will.
So February 2nd
so clever.
is, I think, when we get to see it, which is just in a day or two. So
yeah, we'll talk about that next week, probably.
That'll be interesting.
But Legends.
Yeah,
that's so cool. It's such a unique take on telling a D&D story. That's super fun.
Well, and I think not to downplay, I mean, we all play games, we all stream games, but it's so saturated now that if you are trying to do something new and different, it's like, well, why should I watch this when I already watch Critical Role and Acquisitions Incorporated, and you have to be different, and I don't know, that's hard to do.
And it's such a long form set of entertainment right now. It's 3 hours, 4 hours. It's not like anything else out there if you're keeping up on your favorite shows, but something that's a 30-minute reenactment of the action versus the whole 4 hours of what brought us to that 30 minutes of action. That could be kind of fun. And if you can't animate, but you can create puppets, I mean, that might be a way for you to be able to do that kind of cool thing. Because I couldn't animate a story to save my life, but maybe I could make some puppets and stuff that would be kind of cool. So
use what you got.
Yeah, so it could be interesting. I thought I saw that on. There wasn't much other news. They had no other real videos on their channel to go look at, so they have not dived into Candlekeep. I assume within the next few weeks we'll start seeing Candlekeep videos where they talk about parts of that, or they'll give us some more history on it. They usually do lore you should knows and those kinds of sneak peeks and
lots of fun writers in things.
But it's a campaign book, so there's probably only so much that they could show us. Versus when they did Tasha's, they could have 22 videos because they had 22 subclasses to talk about, plus talk about sidekicks, plus talk about patrons, so they had a lot to do. So I don't know what kind of videos we're going to get. I'm still hoping, we haven't seen anything yet, them mentioning whatever their live show for the year is going to be. Yeah. Are they going to do another online convention? Are we finally pushing to get enough vaccine saturation that people can actually go and visit each other? I don't know if we're there, but if they plan something in August, September, October, maybe that'll happen. But so we'll have to see. So not much news.
I hope they interview writers, because the list of writers that they have on that are just people who I've followed on Twitter for a while, and I was just like, oh my gosh, these are all these people who I've learned so much from just them talking about games, and now they're putting out adventures officially. It's so cool. I think at POC Gamer on Twitter has some writing in there, and they've been a huge influence. He's been a huge influence on trying to write these worlds that are not centered around humans coming up in a way that is sort of Western culture with castles and magic. So as I've been trying to write stuff, he has some really good blog posts about think about this, if this is here, why is this here, and then how does this interact with this, and what are these cultures looking like if they fight against each other, or or come together. And so I don't know, it's just cool to see all of these people who've been doing a lot of work online get officially like paid and represented by Wizards. So that's cool.
I'm a big fan of Amy Vorpal. I don't think I've like mentioned this before, but like I've been following her for a long time, and back when I was first getting into D&D, she was on the Saving Throw show, and I was watching her and I was like, she's so cool. And then she was on Nerdist for a while and doing a bunch of stuff, and I just have a lot of respect for her. She's really awesome. And this is my geek out moment, is because she tweeted that she's like, you know, pandemic was hard, but she changed a bunch of her stuff and she wrote this thing for Wizards and she's been working and things. And I was like, this is why I like Amy Vorpal, everybody. She's like always climbing forward and doing really awesome. And then she liked my tweet, and I'm literally at work and I was like, oh, like, and I was like, yeah, you're just fanboy. It's fun. So hers looks really funny. I can't say who, but I had one of the writers message me and was like, I just watched this video of yours and you're going to be very excited when you read my adventure. And God, I was like, she's so like, cool. I can't say more. And I'm like, okay. But that'll be a lot of fun. So I'm more excited for Candlekeep. And also, it's fun to just have a slew of one-shots. Like, I like that, where it's like, what are you guys playing? I've always had this like level 6 character I want to play. Let's play this.
The Saltmarsh book was so good.
Saltmarsh was excellent. It was a lot of fun.
Underrated book. That Saltmarsh is so good.
We talk about it. It's like one of our favorites. Like, it's way up there. And it is, I was going to say regurgitated content, but it is older content that they made for 5th edition. But like my players loved it because they had this home base. The downtime was a lot of fun of just like running around and like, oh, I want to start a business and I want to do this and I want to go pit fighting, and like then they would unearth more clues and then they get hired again to go do something. And it was so not Critical Role. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but like all of my players were very into Critical Role. And this was a weird experience where they're like, we're just kind of like for hire. And I'm like, yeah, like, what do you want to do? Kind of a thing. Yeah. So,
and see, they did the one before that, Tales from the Portal, which I think was their first kind of bring back anthology stuff.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the formula right. And then they hit with Saltmarsh, and there's the formula's perfect. Yeah. And if they just keep following that and then, you know, bringing stuff in, I think it's just going to be great. Loose threads that tie stuff together, but enough that you can just run it on your own. They have to be interesting enough that you could just run that one piece and it's done. And that makes it so good, because if you have 10 pieces that are so good just by themselves, and you multiply that by 10, that just makes it even that much better. Yeah. So it's not like, oh, I got, you know, I love Storm King's Thunder, I love running it, but really the best part's chapter 3, not the other chapters. You know, you're kind of picking and choosing. But if you've got 10 tight, solid, really good things, and you put them all in the same book, you're just like, this is amazing. You know, this is really good.
And I think it's, again, in the same way that you know, we've all kind of been doing this at our tables and know to do this because we've been DMing for a long time. I think they've gotten a lot better at signaling like how to use material, you know, like, because you can do that. I pull things out of I love Yawning Portal because it feels like it is this toolbox of things that you can just like totally ignore this and that. I use those dungeons all the time just as like, here's the map. I'll like go into Photoshop and like take off the numbers and just like put my own stuff in there. But it doesn't really like tell you how to do that. And then with like Saltmarsh, it really does. I think Descent into Avernus does the same thing, where it's like, here's this sandbox, you can run it like this, or you can run it like this. I don't know, here's a bunch of pieces, and in a way that is good.
Well, that made me another question. What are you doing most of your games online? Are you doing most of your games were in person? I know up till this year it might be a little changed. And then what are you using online to run your games?
Oh boy, I primarily use Roll20.
Okay, so I'm a Roll20 fan. Okay, just checking.
No, and I've tinkered with other things, and I think it's the best like balance of, you know, Fantasy Grounds rips. It's super good. I get that if all of your players were on board and were into like figuring out how to use it, it's really, really good, but I think Roll20 is a good like balance.
And then most of your games are now online games, or have always been online games, or have you played around the table more than you've ever played on online games?
It's a good question.
Because that was the dynamic between me and Jordan was a very community at the table game player when we started the whole show. I was a very online game player because I couldn't find people to play in my hometown. So we came at it from kind of those both directions and had, you know, our viewpoints came from those.
Yeah. I mean, I started I played D&D for 2 years, I think, without having it. Besides like maybe like 10 sessions I'd run in the first 2 years at the table, where I had run like 25 to 30 that were online, just because I just moved to Denver and just knew more people. So kind of like same with you. But then I started, I really wanted to be a player. And so I found a meetup group in Denver that was just at a bar. It was like every Tuesday. It was like kind of Adventures League, but I ended up just like gelling with the table, and we played through all of Dungeon of the Mad Mage, from Dragon Heist to the end.
Whoa!
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing right now. Dungeon of the Mad Mage.
We went 1 to 20, and it was so cool to like play with strangers, play with people I did not know at all besides this table. I knew their character names better than I knew their real names, and but it was just such a different experience of like being able to show up every week and just kind of like come or not come, and it was very, very fun. But I played way more online than I have at a table. But I love it. I love at the table stuff. I love the random meetups so much. It's such a cool, beautiful thing if you can pull it off. Yeah.
No, it's fun how you get complete strangers to, like, we're all going to buy into this, and it's not weird, and everyone else is excited that the other person is also willing to buy into this. And I went to I used to do Adventures League until I basically did the same thing, where I like found the people at Adventures League that I'm like, do you guys want to go to my house, because then I can drink a beer and we can play there? And they're like, oh, that sounds great. And so now I still play with all of those guys, but it's just really fun where everyone's like, yeah, and then somebody you don't know walks up and it's like, I just charmed this guy and he's telling us the whole story of the bad guy. And you're like, rock on, guy I don't know. Like, that's cool. Yeah. So, I don't think we're going to get to our College of Monsters, but that is okay. But we have about 10 minutes left. We'll talk about Monster a Week a little bit, I guess, because Lucian and I are in that game. That's being streamed on LB Hack'em-Up's Twitch on Wednesdays at 8:30 Eastern. So you guys should come watch us live. And if you're in the Discord, I will try to put a ping in the announcements so you guys know when we're going live. But I guess, I don't know. Who wants to start? Lucian, do you want to talk about your experience, or does Harlan have all of the questions?
I'll give you a little bit of background. So we're playing it. Me and Jordan are new to that game. So we're playing with a group that has a couple players that have played it quite a bit. Our game master, or the keeper of the secrets or keeper of the story, she's played but hadn't ran it yet. So it's somebody who's new to running it. We did do a session 0 that we thought was going to be about 30 minutes and ended up being 3 hours because we had a lot of fun. And then we played the session just this past week, and we played for about 3.5 hours and had a pretty good time. It's a very powered by the apocalypse style game, if you haven't seen the Monster of the Week type thing. And you basically have character archetypes, you pick some things, and then you have moves that allow you to do things. That's the general game. And we're playing in a modern day supernatural game, just like the show kind of Supernatural. We're in Montana, and somebody's gone missing, and we're investigating it because we know that there are supernatural things out there, but we're new to that. So that's kind of like the whole setup to the whole thing, where I thought we could really take this conversation, Jordan, as far as we're D&D players, we're dungeon masters, we run games. The differences and the things that are alike, but the things that are very different from the style of games that this ended up being. What do you think from like a dungeon master's standpoint, if you all of a sudden had to turn around and run that same game in that same session, same story, same characters? What would be going on in your mind as far as, how would you prep that, or what's different about it that your D&D skills didn't help you out with, or what did your D&D skills would help you out with that?
Yeah, I was not weirded out, but like while we were playing, I kept thinking like I want to like look for clues, or I want to do this, but you don't have a perception roll. And we even came across where we were talking back and forth, and LB was like, well, do you have like a move for that? And we were like, I don't think so. But like, and so I just started saying things like, are there tracks on the ground? Like, I don't know. Do I see anything out of the ordinary? Can I climb a tree? Can I do this? Because it's one of those where it's so open that you your D&D almost restricts you because you're just like, well, I'm not really good at investigation checks, so I'm not going to do it because I'll probably fail. And I thought that was interesting, but you have kind of core stats, but coming from Kids on Bikes, if somebody wants to make like a perception check, I kind of know the equivalent, and maybe it's because I'm more familiar with that game. But Monster of the Week, I did not know the equivalent of that, so I was like racking my brain, like, do I make
it is mechanics light?
Yeah, and I like that.
How many die rolls did we make in the entire session?
Oh, like 4, like maybe.
Right.
Like, it was crazy.
So the D&D session,
and LB even said like, you'll make more next week, don't worry. But but no, I like the idea of it. It's odd how specific these tropes fit so many TV shows. And I was like, oh, okay, so we found a formula back in the early 90s that really worked for Buffy and X-Files and things like that, because you do have these characters that are, down to your character, which is just like the average Joe who's not good at anything, and it's hilarious. So
I watched your last episode of the Saturday morning D&D show, and you were talking about the mundane, and it is literally the thing that hooked me about Monster of the Week, because I was like, boy, they just have this one-to-one of the TV show on lock, because I didn't even think about that being a trope, and it's such a trope, like the Shaggy character, you know,
the Xander of Buffy,
the
like
Xander,
he's just like,
exactly.
oh. And you in our game specifically, you asked like, hey, I have this move where I can roll to like stumble upon something, and it may or may not help you. Yeah, oops is the ability. Yeah. And so we rolled that, and I guess that's another thing, is because with D&D you are heroes, and you're also heroes here, but like you're not superheroes necessarily. No. And being the guy that can just like walk in, the normal that can walk in and like talk to people, as opposed to my character who like looks like he's homeless and is on a mission from God and is like running around. So it was a lot of fun.
And the idea in the storytelling is that person represents the audience, right? That's who you explain the weirdness to, and that's how the audience gets explained the weirdness. So you kind of have to have that person there to try to explain, why is there somebody running around with a flaming sword? That doesn't make any sense to somebody who doesn't maybe play Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. You know, maybe they get that. So I thought that was interesting. But like you said, mechanics light so far. We dove deep into role-playing our characters and conversations with characters. And I felt like that was a little bit of a shift from what we do in Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons is almost like I'm playing a video game, and I'm moving the controllers and I'm hitting the buttons and things are happening on the screen and the Dungeon Master is telling me those things. We were sitting down and having conversations, almost more of like an improv actor, or I'm feeling out what the character might say or feel or think about that response. So I felt there was a little bit of a difference there too, as far as how the game was represented. It felt more improv and actor-like, I want to say, whereas Dungeons & Dragons feels like I'm playing a video game sometimes. So there was a big difference there. Both are great, both are fun, but it's like a difference that you're going to feel, or so far that I've felt.
It's different styles of play, because my Wildmount game, they are all about voices and strong character opinions and having like discussions in character. But then I've had other people at the table where it's like, my character, third person, like my character would like to walk over here, or they kind of hand wave it. And I've done this too, because it's easier sometimes, where you're just like, I don't have the words, but I want to try and convince him to give me the key. Like, help me, Dungeon Master, with like, what's a good way to do this?
I'm not as eloquent as my character.
And that's fine, because I don't like the idea of it's like, well, if you're a bard, you have to just be charismatic. And I'm like, but if I'm the barbarian, I'm still Jordan. I can't lift that table over my head. Like, why is it okay for me to pretend that, but not pretend these social skills? So
yeah, I mean, I've experienced that with a lot of other games too, that like the character sheet is often a map for how to play this character.
Yeah.
I think 5e is really good at like, here are the things that you're especially good at, and that kind of guides if you want to be like a zany rogue, you can be a zany rogue, but you're still this like sneaky like thief person, or you can be like a grim version of that. And I've experienced that like as a player playing other games, where I'm like, oh, I can just be whatever I want. Like I'm good at this or good at that, but then I can just be whatever I want. And that openness is sometimes intimidating, but sometimes fun. Like you're like, okay, cool. I have these skills, but I can just be this character and I can just decide.
Yeah. I think the show's really brought out already where there's two people that me and Jordan never met. The connection is LB, who we've both met and have played games with before. And so there's a relationship there as far as, we played games with them. We know how they are. But we came together so far so good with two complete strangers that I thought that was a little bit amazing, that there was already chemistry. There was already built into these new characters some chemistry going on. The interactions between how the characters are acting and doing things are really fun. So I felt like that is really going to show up in this show well if you go back and watch it. That I liked a lot. That was different than what we might get in some other games that we play, is that chemistry from the players is really forefront at the moment. And that's super cool. And I thought LB did great with her voices of her characters. And I'm a DM that doesn't do any voices. So if my players never get special voices and stuff, and that's like one deficiency I wish I was better at, because I just can't do, I can't be the Matt Mercer, which I wish everybody could do the voice of Matt Mercer stuff. But she's done a really good job, and I like those. I even think, Jordan, you do a few voices, but you don't do too crazy. You don't go too out. No, I've played in your game.
You should listen to most of Rod of Seven Parts. No,
all right.
I've got like 4, and I kind of just like this is my like lower pitched Irish. It's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not good, but it's fine.
But I love the people that can do that.
Yeah. Lucian, here's my DM pro tip. Bag of helium right here. You just that's character voice. You might get a little lightheaded, but that's part of the
just
fun.
As much helium as I want, just all through the whole session. Then, right? That's your PSA.
Yeah, might go to an oxygen bar afterwards. I don't know.
Kids, we're experts. Don't do this at home.
I've had a couple of people in the chat of our games. Like, there's 4 reoccurring NPCs that are like the crew, and they're really like the 4 voices that I can do. But chat has kind of like started when I stick my jaw out like this. They're like, oh. Harlan's about to, like Goat's about, like this, one of the characters' name is Goat, like Goat's about to talk, like he's got his jaw.
Yeah, those physicalities help a lot. Harlan, thank you so much for coming on to our show. Where can people find you?
See how fast it goes?
Yeah, I know. I love it. We do a 30-minute show, and this felt still like a sprint. So thank you for letting me just talk forever about D&T.
It was awesome.
You can find us on YouTube, on Twitch, on all the socials. I'll drop a link to our Twitter in the chat so you can see.
Oh, I don't know if you have ability on YouTube at least, but
I think it will get mad at me for linking things. Okay, I won't do it. Well, it's
you can try anyway, and maybe I can approve the comment. But.
Yeah, it'll be in comments and stuff.
But I did take your Better Than Heroes Twitch has a Linktree bio that has all of your links, and I put that down below in the description. So check it out. It's a really fun show. I'm on one of the episodes if you want to hang out. I was a Githzerai warlock or so, and we were chased by a space fire dinosaur. It was really fun.
That was a fun one.
You have lots of really great art because of your original flavor Jordan, who does lots of art. But also something that I don't see on a lot of streams is you have an improvised musician that is watching the show and playing and setting the mood while you guys are live, and it's helped so much. That was amazing. So
Jason Wardell is a master. I cannot believe we got so lucky because he's also a DM, and so he just like gets it and is so good at playing on a synthesizer, and he plays along. It's so fun.
So it's really fun. I think one of the really good shows out there. So you should definitely check it out. Better Than Heroes.
Yeah, I encourage people to jump in straight in Arc at the beginning of Arc 2 if they want to, but you can also just come watch us live on Mondays. You'll figure out why we make fun of Relic, the NPC, and who everybody is. They're about to maybe steal a Nautiloid right now. That's kind of like what it's looking like they're going to do. So it's a fun time.
That's awesome.
Come watch it.
Well, thank you again. Lucian, anything before we go?
No. Hey, thanks for coming to the show.
Oh, siren.
And, there's something's going on.
It's Lucian's siren, or is it your siren?
Yeah, well, usually I get my siren at the very beginning of the month, so it's all right.
Awesome.
Thanks for coming to the show, and I think it was awesome. I bet we'll have you on at some point in the future too, and as another guest host.
it'd be awesome.
It was super fun.
Please, thank you.
Thank you guys so much for watching, liking, subscribing, sharing with your friends, all of that awesome stuff. We will see you next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Goodbye. Take care.
See y'all. Thank you.